Section 2 was on Living World, which was the second unit of paper 2, paper 1, sorry. And the first question said, name a small-scale ecosystem you've studied. Name one producer, one consumer. Ideally, it'd be good to have them linked, so you could say producer grass, consumer rabbit, or carrot rabbit. But it has to be an example of a species. You can't just go plants, animals. That's way too waffly. Okay, so you can't get a grade for saying plants and animals. You have to say grass and a deer, for example, or lichen and a deer, or whatever. But name an example of a species. What is the role of producers in the ecosystem? You're all really good at that one. They produce food for the rest of the food chain. They convert CO2. They convert sunlight through photosynthesis and create energy for the rest of the food chain. So yeah, they produce food for the rest of the food chain, etc. It's just a 1 mark. Nice and easy. In there here, he said using figure 7, calculate the range. The range is, I'm sure you've done it in maths. Some of you, most of you got that right, but the range is the difference between the highest and the lowest point. Okay, don't go calculating some fancy stuff. It's just what's the difference between the lowest point and the highest point. Easy. The answer there was 8.5 degrees. Question 2.4, it said it will state 2 differences. The differences have to be different. So you can't say A's got a high temperature, B's got a lower temperature. That's just rubbish, because you've given me twice the same thing but said differently. What you could have said is A has no rain, very little rainfall, B has lower temperatures. That would have worked. Okay, so here you've got a list of all the ways you could have got 1 mark, but on the whole you all did pretty well at that one. It's just a few people told me the same fact said differently, which doesn't quite work. So next one there, which global ecosystem matches the following description? It's an area of trees that drop their leaves. Deciduous trees and forests lose their leaves. Tundra is in the Arctic area. Tropical grassland was in tropical and is grass. And tropical rainforest is a complete different biome in its own right. Okay, and there's no winter per se in the tropical rainforest, whilst in tundras there's pretty much only a winter. So yeah, deciduous forest C was the correct answer there. 2.6. We're looking at a picture. So a figure there, and the figure was showing us about the Great Green Wall of Africa going from Senegal to Djibouti. We looked at building rock wall there, which is called buns, and then you had figure 9 that talked about wildlife conservation and water pipe raised in Svalbard. I say it every single time. Very few of you did it this time, thankfully. But we've only studied about hot environments. So you can give it a go as much as you want with the cold environment. Your answers are never going to be good enough. Not by no fault of your own, just because we haven't taught you cold environments. Because we get a choice between teaching you hot or cold. You have to teach one or the other. So we had to make a call. We picked hot. You have to revise hot and write about hot environment. Because the cold environment, everyone who answered that question is just really waffly David Attenborough knowledge from BBC, which is okay, but it's not fantastic because there's no case study, there's no depth to your answer. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on hot because the rest is because I don't want to waste my time. So figure 8 here, we've got the Great Green Wall. The question said, suggest different strategies used to reduce environmental damage. The key environmental damage of a hot desert or a fringe of a hot desert is desertification. That's what you see here, a box, hot desert. Please just focus on that. You need to make points of what we do to reduce the risk. So you've got here the Great Green Wall. It's on the figure. Tell me the size, tell me what it does, tell me what it plans to achieve, where it is. It's located in the Sahel. It's a wall of trees. And facts, you can use some of the facts that I mentioned here, but tell me why trees help. So the key thing, that is desertification. Trees hold and bind soil together. They prevent wind from blowing sediment away. They prevent sand from being formed, and they prevent the land from drying, because wind will dry the land if it's not protected. So trees will break the wind, and they'll bind the soil, and they'll absorb water and hold water better in the ground. Okay, so that's something you could have explained and talked a bit in more detail. Building rocks, same thing here. The buns, the whole point of them is that they capture downward flow of water. Therefore, they kind of allow water to collect rather than just run off. A surface runoff is huge in the desert area because the water is so arid, so dry. When the water falls, it doesn't really have time to absorb it all. Whereas these building rock walls allow the water to slow down its flow and therefore have time to absorb and infiltrate the grass. Another few examples you could have mentioned would be the use of intermediate technology and planting grass on slopes to help to stabilize the topsoil. Okay, again, you've got 2 case studies given to you. Use them, but you can't just use those. You have to use your own examples too. And then cold environments, I'm going to skip that because it's we didn't study it. Okay. So in that case, again, it's a 6-mark question, not 9. So ideally, I want you to make 3 points, 3 examples, and explain how each of those work. Next one we have is question 2.7. A feature of the pattern of wildfires in Brazil. North of Brazil, it would have worked. Central northern Brazil, concentrated south of the Amazon River would have worked. Don't tell me in the middle, in the center. Okay, try and use the compass geographical terminology there, please. Question 2.8 was a 2-mark question. Give one reason why wildfires are a threat to global climate change. Global climate. A lot of you say climate change, global warming, greenhouse gases. Great, 1 mark. But how? Okay, so you've got an example here. Burning trees release CO2 into the atmosphere. Cool. They couldn't care less, really. They contribute to the greenhouse effect. Okay, they're talking a bit more. Okay, so just talk me through how things work. Give me the cause. Give me the knock-on effect. That's for 2 marks. Question 2.9. Again, there you've got 4 incredible things on your figure. Use it. It says use figure 11 and a case study. Case study you could have used would be Malaysia or Brazil. Either of those would have worked. And what I would like to see there is for you to talk about the causes. So these are some of the causes, and it says here some economic activity in tropical rainforests have major environmental impacts. Do you agree? Ideally, you need to use all 4 of these examples because they're in your handout. Okay, you've got palm oil, shifting cultivation, hydroelectric dam, and ecotourism. The key thing there is you have to say yes, I agree, and no, I disagree. Okay, so an example of why you agree is yes, palm oil plantation cuts whole loads of trees down, replaces them with younger trees. Younger trees don't absorb as much carbon, and therefore there's more carbon has been emitted by cutting the trees down than absorbed by the planting of palm oil trees. Okay, obviously shifting cultivation, it's quite clear, you can see it on the picture. You cut trees down, less CO2 is absorbed, more CO2 stays in the atmosphere. So you've got a bit of information there about small scale shifting cultivation, palm oil. Basically tell me how economic activity is bad for the environment in the first paragraph, for example. Okay, however, you can also balance that out. Okay, ecotourism is not a negative. I know you have to fly to like Timbuktu or Nicaragua to go and be ecologically minded, but once you're there, the whole point of ecotourism is it does bring benefits because it allows people to it has minimum impact on the environment. During the in the industry, they'll have some schemes that will help to protect the environment, enhance educate tourists about the risks to the local environment, and therefore improve conservation. Same for hydroelectric dam. Yes, it does flood huge, vast areas of the rainforest by creating a dam, but it does also allow the creation of wetlands and habitats, and wetlands hold carbon. So you could here talk about the positives of HEP dams. Other facts that weren't there, which you could have talked about, because it's 9 mark, you have to go to town on it, is words like industries like mining, commercial farming, logging, building houses, or any of these really would have worked. But Malaysia and Brazil are the best examples, and there you need to tell me yes they do, no they don't. Okay, so remember to balance it. But ecotourism would 100% be on your answer of no, economic activities can also protect the environment. Hydroelectric dams, depending on how you argue it. Yeah, I know a lot of the time it'll be a bit biased, but the key thing there is you have to mostly here evaluate and judgment. A range of views may be taken. It's likely that students will recognize small scale local sustainable activity have a relatively small impact. Okay, so you could also say, well, small scale planting has a really teeny tiny impact. What is a big impact is huge commercial farms. So that was your 9 marker for Living World.